right, here we go with our weekly offloading of our own stress and worry and anxiety that we like to call In Progress here at Progress, Texas. I am podcasting director Chris Mosier. We are here with advocacy manager Reagan Stone.
Howdy, everybody.
We are here with digital associate Haley Smith.
Hey, y'all.
Whom right off the bat, I would like to shout out. You may or may not know that Haley engineered top to bottom her very first happy hour podcast for us when she had some really cool guests on for Pride Month a couple of days ago. So just want to real quick shout out Haley for a terrific job done with that.
Nice job.
I loved how it came out. So everybody that's listening to this, go listen to that.
Yeah, great. Man, it came out terrific. So, and in honor of that, I think I'm going to let Haley, in this case, for this week's complaint session, what's on your mind? What would you like to start with?
Well, something that's been on my mind, like all of this week, is the Tucker Carlson, Ted Cruz fight that happened. And like, I, more than anybody, relished in Ted Cruz getting his turn for the public lashings in the town square, you know? But more than anything, what I've taken away from that whole catfight was that Tucker Carlson, this entire time, has been capable of journalism. Like, this isn't, like, he didn't just flip a switch in his brain. Like, he woke up that morning and decided to be an honest-to-God human being, which, you know, maybe...
Got an atlas or something like that. He was just throwing facts out. Like, how many is in Iran? 90 million people live in Iran, and this
like,
many square miles. And
yeah, you know.
I'm remembering there's an old country song, and I forget who did it, but there's a line in the country song that I don't know the difference between Iraq and Iran. It might have been an Alan Jackson song or something.
Yeah, that was the 9/11 song, right?
Like, it was immediately after all that stuff. You know, it was an ultra patriotic sort of moment for sure.
Yeah, we were all just like, I literally used that statement, not to go too far off, but I used that statement on something else, the 9/11 effect, when like 80 or 90% of the country is like in agreement about something for a second.
Right.
It's we haven't had that in a long time.
See, you guys, you know, Haley wasn't around in 2001, I don't think, were you?
No, I was not.
And Reagan, you were probably, what, 4 or 5 years old?
I was 11 years old.
11 years old. So you remember some of it. And that was probably actually pretty scary for a smaller kid like that. Yeah. I was in my adulthood. Well, we were expecting our first kid, actually. My wife was pregnant with our first kid when that went down. So that was a real scary moment for us as far as what was going to happen. And absolutely, there was the fear that everybody felt. And then there was this kind of sense of unity that everybody felt for about a month. And then after that, you know, the Bushes started doing crazy stuff, and it all went to hell from there. So, but anyway, we digress. Back to what we're talking about. The Cruz Carlson thing. My impression of it was that Cruz was caught with his pants down because he expected softballs from Tucker Carlson, just like Haley's talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
When you're full of shit, it's easy to point out that you're full of shit. You know, even and you know, the person who you're conversing with chooses to follow you into being full of shit or not. In this particular instance, Tucker Carlson, who, by the way, we also loathe. I have not forgiven Tucker Carlson for anything, you know, personally.
Yeah. No.
He's very much in image rehab. He's been kicked off network TV. He'd love to get back on network TV. So he's, you know, it makes sense for him to make a play for the center, if you will. And I kind of found, you know, Ted Cruz should know a lot more about the country that he would like to attack. But at the same time, I almost kind of, the idea that Cruz or Trump or Hegseth or any of these people give a shit about how many people are in Iran, that's not, the normal everyday people are not what they're thinking about.
Yeah. And going back to what you said about this happening, you know, however long, 20 years ago, I also was not around for that time, but I feel like the atmosphere then was...
Ooh, you've got a ghost.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's a 20-year-old ghost right there.
Wow.
I told you my apartment's mad at me.
For those who are just listening, we're going to keep this in for sure. What fell off the wall? What was that?
My shelf. I had a wall shelf. It was nailed to the wall.
As we're recording this, and we will have video for this to post somewhere, Haley's shelf came flying off her wall right after she complained that her apartment was mad at her before we started recording.
We didn't even plan on talking about this, but there's a side piece that a company that's been doing a bunch of injection wells in West Texas got shut down by the Railroad Commission, or rather told not to do any more injections because there's been so many just minor, but 3.0 earthquakes out in West Texas in the past few weeks. So I don't know if you just got shooken right there, but
could have been an earthquake, is what you're telling me.
Has San Marcos been getting earthquakes lately? I haven't heard about that. You guys are close.
Might be the first.
Wowzers. Okay. All right. So I guess we're done with Cruz and Carlson. Reagan, what's stuck in your craw this week besides earthquakes?
This is something I think both of us kind of can talk a little bit more about. We were out in Bastrop this past weekend, and I was hanging out with the 134 pack on Saturday, and they were noting, while we were having that conference go on, that the No Kings protest, of course, was happening. And I think in Bastrop, Texas, there was the estimate was about 7,000 folks standing out on the 35 bridge, waving American flags, patriotic folks out there.
7,000 in Bastrop showed up?
7,000.
Wow, yeah. Man.
Wow.
And growing little city,
Yeah.
But then at the same time, out in Brewster County, I was talking to organizers out there. About 300 people showed up at the Brewster County courthouse. So, I mean, little tiny county. I think there's just about 6,000 folks that live in Alpine, and 300 folks came out. So just amazing. I think the estimates, just to be conservative in that way, is about 5 million people across the country have showed up. And of course, largely peaceful, nonviolent. There's always going to be a little bit of a heckle when you get a bunch of people in a one place at any given time, but
Sure.
Extremely nonviolent, and something that just resonated with me in that way. I had seen a couple days before, but it's a John Lennon, and I'm just paraphrasing, but he kind of noted he was kind of working off of the Muhammad Gandhi or the MLK Jr. type of idea of nonviolence. And he said the government only knows how to respond to violence. They got all the weapons in the world to take you down, but if you're nonviolent, they don't know what to do.
That's very interesting. And there's a meme actually that I posted to the Progress Texas Slack earlier that was John Lennon that is a similar but different quote, which is, and I've got it in front of me here, quote, "Working class people around the world have no innate desire to go to war with each other. They have to be conned into it by the sociopaths who will profit from it," unquote. Mr. Lennon, very, very interesting. And of course that's, palpable at this moment when things are, threatening to go crazy over in the Middle East. But back to No Kings. I have a couple of thoughts, residual thoughts from last weekend. One, I'm real curious as to how much of our money Governor Abbott spent on activating the National Guard and a whole bunch of, thousands of extra DPS troopers, including, special agents and Texas Rangers and whatnot. I didn't see any of those people in Austin. I mean, I know some people saw some National Guard around downtown and around the Capitol. I was only there, and I got out of there. I left pretty early, anticipating that things might get hot, and I didn't really want to be in the middle of that. But in Austin, it was all over by about 10 p.m. And I think they arrested about 13 people, that's a standard, Wednesday night in Austin, Texas. So
yeah, that's 6th Street. Too many folks be partying out there or something like that.
That's 6th Street by like 11 p.m. really on a happening night. So that's number one. And number two, there's been all this talk, and Reagan talked about the estimates of the national turnout. I've heard up to 6 million people. I don't know that they're ever going to be able to scientifically really nail it down, but
the largest, I think we can say nearly the largest one-day mass protest in American history.
Yes. We can say that. I think that's pretty well established for sure. And so in the wake of that, there's been all this talk about what they call the 3.5% rule, which I think you guys both are probably familiar with that, but those who are a little bit less wonky than us, That is a political theory, and actually, I think is kind of a proven sort of trend across history. That authoritarian or dictatorial sort of regimes cannot survive a sustained nonviolent uprising by at least 3.5% of the population of the country that they're ruling over. And so, if we're up around the 6 million figure, if we're going to be generous and say 6 million people showed up for No Kings, that's getting, a little bit upwards of 2% of the overall population of the country. And so we're already kind of closing in on this. And a positive way to think about it at a moment when authoritarianism hasn't quite been established yet. They are sure trying. But it's nice to see people telegraphing ahead of that and seeing that it's starting to develop and starting to react to it in huge numbers like this. And so I find that very heartening. And that's a really interesting concept, by the way. If you're a fan of history or political science, that's something to dive into. It comes out of a Harvard thing.
And I might add to that too. I know our executive director Kathleen Thompson, she wanted to jump on here too, but she had noted from her personal view of the Dallas No Kings protests that of all the different types of folks that were there, age brackets, different ethnicities, of course, just really showed the beautiful fabric of America coming out to that. And just, these protests, like we said, nonviolent, they're really, I've seen a lot of, especially in the small towns, it's almost like a potluck. It's like everybody just coming together, hanging out, of course, getting a little bit of anger out, but then also noting the beautiful community that we're all part of, and anybody can be part of that. You can call yourself a Democrat, an independent. You can call yourself a Republican, whatever you want. It's the idea that in 1776 we said there ain't no more kings, and we've defended that for well over now getting close to 250 years.
And growing up, I don't know about you guys, but I was always taught that the best thing about this country was how many people there are. We're the melting pot of the world. Like, why would you not want to live in a place that has so many people and so many great things to experience and all that it has to offer? Why would we want to take that away for something more boring? I mean, like, besides all of the racist, I'm sorry, I'm going to curse, besides all the racist bullshit, why would you want to make this country less great?
Yeah.
There's no reason outside of ignorance or stupidity. That's why they say it's such a good thing to travel. That's why travel is such a good thing, because you see other cultures and you learn how other people live, and it expands your horizons and makes you a more well-rounded person. It's pretty basic, really.
And I want to give another just quick heartfelt story. Of course, a lot of these protests, we're talking about a wide variety of issues. A lot of folks also came out because of the immigration and the migrant issues we're having right now. Of course, the Trump administration is trying to get up to 3,000 folks deported per day. We know it's not criminals. We know it's abuelitas and grandpas and folks that are working hard to be in America.
It's cooks and carpenters and roofers and people like that.
And lawyers and doctors. It's everybody. Yeah. And at the same time, of course, when I say that, the most vulnerable, the people that are the working class folks, or even just the folks that are making minimum wage jobs, doing, of course, the harder jobs. Those are going to be the people that are going to be, having the harder time learning how to become a documented or a citizen as well. So, but I think a heartfelt story I just wanted to share, and I got this from Rio Grande Borderlands Facebook just yesterday. It was a story out of, I believe it was Chicago, but don't quote me on that. Just a big old city, and two National Guard soldiers. They decided, they were off that day, but they put their uniforms on and they went to walk their mother safely into her immigration appointment.
Saw that.
And my God, did that just like boost my heart spirit to note that she's doing the right thing, showing up to her appointment, making sure she's going through the process, and that her sons, both part of the National Guard, were there to make sure that no funny business. And I don't mean funny. I mean some bad old business by ICE and those folks that are covering their faces and going into these public places and arresting folks just like their mom.
We're talking about unmarked cars. We're talking about ununiformed guys in masks. There is very little to separate the images we've seen of these ICE apprehensions from what we imagine happens with the cartel, with down in Mexico, with people being kidnapped by the cartel. What's different from it is a bunch of guys,
no badges on them,
nothing on them, no markings of any kind. And I saw that too, Reagan, and I thought, what would have happened if ICE had tried to grab her with the two sons present? I'm real curious as to how that would have gone. Would there have been because you're not only, facing off against, fellow, I guess, troops or officers or whatever you would call it, but now somebody's mom's at stake.
Yeah.
I would be, I'm not saying I would like to see it. I would not like to see it. I hate that it even has the possibility of happening. But when I saw that video, I thought, what happens if they do show up? What happens if a confrontation takes place? And that speaks to the degree of lawlessness that has crept into this entire situation.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
If you want to avoid this, like you said, I don't want this to happen either. There's a very simple way to avoid this, and it's by doing this lawfully with your face, with a badge, with identification, with a uniform,
with a warrant. Yeah.
Like you said, this is just a completely lawless kidnapping of legal citizens. And even if they're not legal, they're victims of a very broken immigration system that's just waiting to prey on them. Mm-hmm. It's so sad and heartbreaking. But like you said, I don't want this to happen. But more than anything, I wish for the safety and security of this woman who's done nothing wrong over these masked men who are literally there to kidnap her.
Right. And let's not gloss past the fact that arrest itself, the act of arrest itself, has now become something punitive thrown at people who might try to intervene in these situations. We've seen a California senator thrown to the ground by officers when he tried to ask a question at a press conference. We've seen I think he's the comptroller of New York City. New York City comptroller, who's also
mayoral candidate as well. Yeah.
Who I think his campaign may have gotten a little bit of a boost out of this situation. We'll see what happens.
Yes, so. Yeah.
But he got arrested as well and held for a while on what charges, who knows, and why, who knows, and where, who knows, and by whom, who knows. That's another question. And I feel myself beginning to ramble. I'm going to put the brakes on it here, but who the hell are these guys? Where are they getting these ICE agents? Who are these people? Are they cops? Are they, off duty? We all see police officers at a music festival or at a concert or at some other thing where they've been hired to provide extra security, make some extra money after hours, whatever it is. Is that who this is? Are these, who are these dudes?
Just like we're missing this week, of course, Sam Gonzalez on his For the Children moment. I'm going to do the Reagan Stone conspiracy theory moment. Are they deputized Proud Boys? I don't know.
Absolutely. Well, there's no reason they wouldn't be.
And there's conspiratorial, but then, if they don't give us any evidence otherwise, and frankly, I don't really think that Trump is too low for that.
No.
I think he would do something like that. And it sucks that we live in a world now where we really do have to ask the question, are right-wing extremists kidnapping people off the street with full immunity? And what do we do now?
Haley, you are genuinely frightening me with that. That's I hadn't thought about it that way. That's insane. And let's keep going a little bit further into that. I'd like to see some statistics on how many people who participated in the January 6th insurrection are now working as ICE agents.
Well, they're all pardoned.
Yeah, they're all perfectly legal for it, for sure. Oh my God, what a rabbit hole.
Whew. I thought we were going to have a feel-good story there. Goodness, what am I thinking?
Megan, is this your first in progress?
Yeah, I guess I should have known.
Progress Texas podcasting director Chris Mosier here. Independent, public, fact-based media is under direct attack by the Trump administration and congressional Republicans. Why? Because we dare to speak truth to power. We don't fire our staff members for expressing their own views. We don't shy away from what's really happening out of fear. As we all know, information is power, and once the truth is silenced, we're all powerless. Progress Texas relies on funding from our listeners and viewers to keep shining a light on the truth in Texas. If you've come to rely on Progress Texas, please support us. We don't do subscriptions or paywalls because the media we produce is important for everyone to be able to see and hear, but it can't continue without you. Please become a regular, sustaining monthly supporter of Progress Texas right now at progresstexas.org/donate.
So yeah, I mean, goodness, let's go back to Texas for a second. Governor Abbott, he has a deadline coming up by Sunday. He can, of course, sign or veto bills. I think there's a lot of confusion out there that if Abbott doesn't sign the THC bill, or rather the ban on all the THCs, that's right. The Delta, the THCA, the THCP. Rep. Gene Wu put out a neat video on his social media noting all the different things that are going to become illegal. Anything you can buy right now that even talks about THC, it's going to become illegal on September 1st if Governor Abbott doesn't veto that by this Sunday. And I guess just to throw it in there too, that's the same thing with what, in my opinion, unconstitutional move to put the 10 Commandments in every public school classroom.
Right.
So, some big old bills that Governor Abbott could say, hey, I don't want to have to spend hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars, defending these unconstitutional moves that we've already seen that federal judges have shot down in states like Louisiana, right next door. Instead, we're going to be like, let's go fight it out in court and use taxpayer dollars to try to mandate religion in our public school classrooms. What the heck has got on with small government, separation of church and state? Goodness.
What happened to all that good stuff? So we talked a minute ago about Governor Abbott's activation of extra troops for the No Kings thing. I'm thinking that had to cost at least $100 million, and so I think he's willing to cough up whatever it takes to put on a show. The ACLU has already said, I think they've already got a lawsuit, ready to hair trigger go as soon as he signs the 10 Commandments thing. There is one other religion in schools bill, which is the one about allowing local school districts to establish prayer time for the kids in the schools in their district. So that becomes a fight. That's not mandated. That's left up to school boards. And so that's yet another reason, dear listener, for you to find out about your local school board to make sure that you're showing up for those meetings and know what those people are doing. But back to the mechanics of what we're talking about, this deadline on Sunday. Reagan, you might know this, and if you don't, no big deal. But as you mentioned, he can either sign something, he can veto something, or he can allow something to become law without doing anything. How often does that third thing happen? Is that common?
I mean, that's the majority. I think, I'm going to throw these numbers off the top of my head, but we're getting close to 10,000 bills being filed each session. About between 1,500 and 2,000 get actually passed both in the House and the Senate. Everybody knows, that bill sitting on Capitol Hill type song. So they have to be passed in both houses. And then they go to the governor's desk. And in this case, he can, of course, sign something, becomes law. He can veto it. It doesn't. Or he can just let it ride, right? He doesn't have to do anything, and it does become law. And the fact of it is that the majority, 75%, if not getting close to the majority of those 1,500, 2,000 bills will just float right past his desk and become law. Most of those become law on September 1st.
I think it is so, as Tucker Carlson would say, a sleazy feline way of navigating legislation to push through a bill that nobody wants. And then once it finally reaches your desk, along with the boxes of letters saying not to sign it, that you're just gonna let it ride. Right. It's just a plausible deniability for his whole thing that he set up. It's like, why are we letting him get away with this?
Yeah. And have y'all seen those advertisements with Dan Patrick's little press conference being used now to where he's throwing the bag of wheat? I think it was brownies or some type of things. And they're now all of the companies are trying to sell them at deep discounts to try to get,
Sure.
as much of their product into Texas as they can before it becomes illegal. One of the ads are they grab the product, off screen, obviously, from Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, and they're like, oh, well, you can look right on the back of our product. This is the one he was throwing, and it has all of the ingredients listed right on there.
Right.
I mean, that
embarrassment I got from that video. It's like, I can't even think about it.
Let's not forget that we are talking about Dan's man here.
Dan's man.
And one thing that I hadn't really thought too clearly about, there was a good article in Texas Monthly about all this, is the fact that, of course, all of us, being normal, sensible people would love to see Governor Abbott veto this bill. That would hurt him in the eyes of the MAGA base, so that, to me, that makes it unlikely that he will actually do that. A couple of things here. If he were to veto it, if we were to all be super happy that he vetoed it, that would be about the most public slap in the face that he could possibly ever come up with for Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, who is just as powerful as he is in the legislature.
If not more powerful.
If not more powerful. And by more, what that means is, most folks listening to this know this, but the lieutenant governor has full control over what is presented in front of and goes through the Senate. He can kill anything he wants from going through the Senate. Thus, he can kill anything from ever reaching the governor. The governor, of course, after the fact, as we're talking about, has the power to veto anything that's gone through. So, Lieutenant Governor, the edge he has is that he gets to touch it first, basically. And in this case, if Abbott were to kill this prized thing that Dan is dying for, Dan's ban, he wants it so badly and has since the beginning of the session, back at the beginning of the year. If Abbott kills that, then Patrick is going to be in a perfect position to kill anything that the governor wants to get done, as long as both of them are in their current positions. So there is a consequence either way. Governor Abbott is not in a good position. Here's another thing to think about, and let's not go off into the whole redistricting thing. That's a whole other ball of wax that we really don't have time for. The fact that Donald Trump is pushing the Texas legislature to reconvene for a special session to redistrict Texas outside of a new census, just so that they can, get their best advantage for the 26 elections, which shows their desperation really more than anything. Mm-hmm. But should Governor Abbott cave to Donald Trump, which is highly likely, that means there's already going to be a special session for redistricting. At that point, why not throw in another special session to have a redo on Dan's ban, so that Governor Abbott can get that, monkey off his back, so to speak, and put it in somebody else's, make it somebody else's problem. I could totally see that happening.
Yeah, and you can bring up anything at a special session. So, the can of worms gets opened back up by those two leaders. I mean, that's kind of the reason I think that so many folks don't want to have one, is even Republicans are like, it gets scary. It's like, we've already been there for 6 months, did what we need to do. I mean, to be honest, the majority of Governor Abbott and Dan Patrick's priorities did pass. They're going to go into law. And Republicans are like, first, I don't want to have to leave my family again. I don't want to have to live in Austin. But at the same time, it's like, what could happen? It's nuts.
Mm-hmm. But, and it's a crazy situation we found ourselves in, where our governor and our lieutenant governor don't care about me or you. They care about what Donald Trump has to say, or what the, alcohol pack has to say. And it's like, well, what about me?
Yeah.
One paying taxes, they're not paying taxes. You made sure of that. So like, where's my money going? And again, this is just a full circle thing of like, they don't care about what you or I have to say.
Yeah. Speaking of those, speaking of the lawmakers who don't want to spend one more second than they have to in Austin, Texas, those guys hate being here. A lot of those red state, smaller, or red county, I should say, or red district representatives who are in the House, they loathe Austin. They loathe the idea of Austin. They loathe being here. They're afraid to be here. They've convinced themselves that Austin is this lawless hellhole, full of radicals and, God forbid, gay people and drag queens and drag shows and drag time story hour. They're scared to death to be here. They hate being here. And so, yeah, there is, for a lot of Abbott's most reliable lackeys in the Senate, most of them really, really do not want to be here. And so calling a special is there is a little bit of a PR hit for Abbott, just in making them hang out here any longer than they have to.
In the last minute or two here, I'm going to do a total swivel head change of topic. This is something I was thinking about yesterday, and I'm going to talk about, of course, something that Progress Texas will be bringing up in the next couple weeks, which is that big U.S. Budget that's coming through, right, that they're calling the big beautiful bill, the big horrible bill. I just want to throw out there that all of the cuts that are happening, whether they're national parks or NPR or PBS or to Medicaid or to other social safety nets, or getting rid of public employees wherever they might be, the way that I think, and I want to hear from our listeners, let me know if we should keep going down this path. The way I see that cuts are happening, I'm seeing that they don't believe in America anymore. When you get, even if you add to the federal deficit or have a budget, not as much money that's coming in as you're putting out, typically companies do that because they bet on themselves. We believe in America. We believe in the company that we're the leaders of. We think that there is going to be more money in the next decade or the next 2 decades. And that's why you have a deficit typically, is because you say, I'm going to invest in American workers right now, in the American families right now, in the workforce that we support, because it's ultimately going to turn into more revenue or a better quality of life for the people in the USA. What I'm going to say is Donald Trump, the leaders in the U.S. Congress, on the Republicans in the U.S. Senate and so forth, they are not betting on America anymore. And I want to hear from our listeners if that resonates with y'all. So what else is going on in y'all's weekend? Some good things. Haley, what you up to?
On Tuesday, actually, I went and saw that new Wes Anderson movie, and it was really great.
That was really
very,
good.
Very current for this time. I mean, beyond Tom Hanks playing basketball, which was great. No spoilers. But it's very present for the moment. It deals a lot about like religion and money and business, and I think, Reagan, it speaks to really what you just said about how they don't really care about the little guy anymore. And to people who think that government should be run like a business, like there are things more important than a deficit. There are things more important than balancing a budget. Like they're cutting up and selling all of our national land right now.
Yeah.
And that's all stuff we can get back, And I think realizing what makes life so precious isn't how much money we're getting in this national budget. It's people like you and me, and it's the earth we live on. And it really sucks to see people, I mean, beyond because the damage it does to us and our environment, be so detached from those things, because it is sad for them. Those are the things that matter. And I just really hope that one day they open their eyes and see all they've done.
Wes Anderson, a Houston area native, cool dude. Yeah.
Do you guys know the band Reckless Kelly? Have you heard of Reckless Kelly?
Yes.
So I happen to know those guys through my radio stuff, and their lead singer, whose name is Willie Braun, posted on Facebook a really heartfelt protest against what we're talking about, which is the selling off of national parklands and national areas. They're from Idaho originally, so they're close to the land, as it were. And so I want to shout out Willie for a lot of, and they play kind of a country style of music too. And so that's a treacherous place for country performers to go to get into, political sort of stuff that is not in line with the Trump agenda. Can be a scary place for country performers to go. So he's got a lot of guts doing that. I wanted to mention, speaking of movies, I got to go see the new F1 movie the other night at the Bob Bullock IMAX here in Austin. Brad Pitt was there himself and came out and greeted the crowd. It was real cool. I found myself kind of starstruck. I was sitting about, maybe 30 feet away from where he was speaking. That movie, I will say, and this will lead me into one final thing I want to mention before we wrap up. That movie was great action. I'm not a big action film guy, but if you like race cars, it's full of race cars and lots of that kind of action, and really cool, and great sound, great soundtrack. Pitt plays an older racer who's kind of drawn back into the championship, world of F1 racing. And so there's a tale there about believing in yourself and not, allowing your age to stop you from chasing your dreams and all that stuff. There's a big redemption arc there, and it's pretty decent. I liked it. If you like action movies, you'll like it. If you like racing, you'll like it. But that leads me to one last thing I wanted to mention, and that's this Substack that I came across. That was written by The Big Picture and Todd Beaton, that talks about older folks who turned out in droves for the No Kings protest. And anybody who went, I definitely noticed there's plenty of folks who are older than me. I'm in my mid 50s, and plenty of folks way older than me showing up for this thing. And not all of them with great easy mobility too. A lot more effort than some of us have to put into to show up to a big crowded event outdoors like that in a big crowd. It can be a challenge for some people, and a lot of folks were up to it. This particular article has a great picture and also the signs that we saw all through that thing. That was the fun part, was reading all the signs. In the Substack is a picture of an older lady who has her sign reads Grantifa, Grandmas Against Fascism, which I think is terrific. And the article is really good. And, we talk a lot and we put a lot of effort into reaching out or doing all we can to activate our younger voters. And of course, that's super important as well. But I'm gratified as the elder statesman of the Progress Texas staff to see some recognition going to some of our older folks who are still showing up after all these years. I got to go to a town hall in Kerrville that Kendall Scudder, the new chair of the state party, held a couple of weeks ago. Average age of that thing was probably 68, 70, something like that. But they were very cool people, very dedicated, all the way out there in Kerrville, Texas. A lot of those folks, through the conversation we figured out, had activated in their political life in the Vietnam War. Mm-hmm. And that became an interesting point of conversation, that a lot of these older folks saw injustice, saw a threat to their way of life that was being done on behalf of a national action that they did not agree with. And that drew them into politics, not because they decided they were a Democrat or because they decided they were a Republican or whatever it was. It was something about, it was something actually affecting their lives. And so, perhaps sometimes the side effect of a national turmoil, like we seem to be beginning to emerge into now, is that people get off the sidelines. People see a threat to their way of life and become lifelong political advocates and activists. And so, hats off to the older folks who came out for No King.
Hats off to the old folks, to everybody that was out there. Of course, I'm going to mention one last movie, and I think we got to wrap this up and get the heck out of here. But
fun though.
It is fun talking with y'all. There's a movie that I've been challenged to rewatch. It's that old Gandhi movie. I mentioned him a minute ago, but I want to say something that kind of comes from his philosophy, is that there have always been dictators, there have always been authoritarians, and they always lose, they always die. And so I think something to give to our readers here, or rather our listeners here, sorry folks, y'all are listening, but to give to our listeners is that, it's not about necessarily waiting that out. Of course, there's action to do. Of course, there's nonviolent protests to attend. Of course, there's organizing. But the idea also to that is that make sure you're here and make sure you're healthy when, in fact, we become, the ruling party, or rather the ruling progressives again of this country. Make sure you're here and healthy. Don't make, we just brought up 10 different issues that I'm sure you're getting read in your car or wherever you're listening. But take care of yourself, folks. Be here for when finally, that authoritarian ruling class leaves power. It's going to happen. It's going to happen.
When the witch is dead.
Amen.
Right. Ding dong. And that's not an if, that's a when. Guys, thank you so much. I feel like my weekend has gotten off to a real nice start with this conversation. So
same here. Thanks,
guys. Nice work, dudes. It's Reagan Stone, our advocacy manager,
Have a beautiful rest of your weekend, folks. Take care of yourselves.
It's Haley Smith, our digital associate.
It was a great time. Thanks, y'all.
And I'm Chris Mosier, podcasting director, Progress Texas. Everything about all we do at progresstexas.org. There's a special surprise coming down our feeds over this weekend, tomorrow afternoon, Saturday afternoon, right about 4 o'clock. And say wink, wink, nudge, nudge, say no more, say no more.